Government Television. Welcome to this week's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting. Originating from the County Administrative Center, located at 1115 Truxton Avenue in Bakersfield, California. Grounded in ideas, energy, and innovation, Kern County's vision is to be a driving force for the world's fifth largest economy. And our mission is to exceed expectations of the communities we serve, changing the way they feel about government, those who manage it, and the services it provides. Today's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting will convene momentarily.
Board to reconvene. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Supervisor Peters.
Here.
Supervisor Scrivener.
Here.
Supervisor Maggard.
Here.
Supervisor Couch.
Here.
Supervisor Perez.
Thank you. Good afternoon and welcome to the Tuesday, June 28, 2022, 2 p.m. meeting of the Board of Supervisors. We will begin by considering the consent agenda, and agendas are located on the tables near the doors for anyone wishing to follow along. All items listed with a CA above the item number are considered to be routine and non-controversial by county staff. Consent items will be considered first and may be approved by one motion. If a member of the audience wishes to comment or ask questions regarding an item on the consent agenda, they may do so prior to a vote being taken. A member of the board may remove any item from the consent agenda, and it will be considered in listed sequence with an opportunity for any member of the public to address the board concerning the item before action is taken. So I'll read the consent agenda items now. Starting on page 2, items 3 and 4 are on consent. On page 3, items 5 and 6 are on consent. And on page 7, items 25 and 26 are on consent. On page 8, all items 27 through 32 are on consent. On page 9, items 34 through 40 are on consent, so we will have 33. And on page 10, all items 41 through 44 are on consent. And finally, on page 11, all items 45 through 50 are on consent. Do we have any members of the audience who would like to make any comments on the consent agenda? Okay, see none, I'll return to the board for comments, questions, or a motion.
I'll make a motion on consent.
Second.
You have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved, 4 ayes, 1 absent. Supervisor Perez.
Thank you. Now back on page 2 of our agenda. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons to address the board on any matter not on this agenda, but under the jurisdiction of the board. Board members may respond briefly to statements made or questions posed. They may ask a question for clarification, make a referral to staff for factual information, or request staff to report back to the board at a later meeting. Also, the board may take action to direct the staff to place a matter of business on a future agenda. So do we have any members of the public that would like to make a comment under public presentations? Please state your name and observe our 2-minute time limit. Please come forward. Good afternoon.
Hi, Paul Infesti, District 3, Mike Maggard's district. First of all, I just want to mention a couple of things in the last session. David Couch brought up the transportation, what was it called? A tax? What do they call that?
A measure.
Oh, half-cent sales tax. I just wanted that brought back memories because my mom worked on that committee, Julia Linfesti, years ago. I still have her certificate and my thing, the thank you for working on that committee. And I just want to say this was a great thing. You know, she was a lifelong Democrat, but Russell Johnson, who she also knew from that committee, she liked him so much she even put a sign up when he was running for city council in the yard. So, and she was very complimentary about you as well. I want to state what someone else was talking about earlier. Oh, well. What I was talking about, we're talking about earlier about the elections and the slowness of getting results. I want to point out we're not late on those, or the county's not late on those until July 8th, actually. And we shouldn't be really in a race with another county like Tulare. It has a whole different set of how they do things there. I would rather the election results be correct than be on the night after the election. And people that want to have it all hand counted, all of them, and yet still expect the results the next morning, like by 5 a.m. is a little unrealistic, since even without the hand counts, it's still taking a while. We're a big county now. We don't always have it, and I do understand how numbers can flip, because some people are more apt to vote by mail, some by at the actual polls. So just keep those in mind. And I wanted to say something good about a department that I had a good experience with a couple weeks ago. I got my tax reassessment because my dad died and turned over to me, and it showed a 4-time increase in what my property tax would be this year. But I went down, filled out the form, and it was a very easy step to get that, because it was his primary to me being the primary, and all I had to do was just fill out the right forms, and it wasn't automatic when he died, but it was a very simple process. And I'm going to say I personally had a pleasant experience with the assessor's office on that. So I just wanted to say that. And so many, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Maggard?
Yes.
Paul, I'm not trying to expose your personal life to the public scrutiny, but what was the lag between when he passed away and when you made the transfer?
I don't know how he set it up, because it took several months, because they had to establish the certificate with him and everything. But my dad had already put in some kind of paperwork that had my name on it with the word decedent or something on it. And apparently, without my knowledge, the attorney for my dad handling the estate established in June. My dad died in March of last year, and in June was when it was officially recorded. But they did record the transfer at the exact time that my dad had died. It just was backtracked to that on the paperwork.
I see.
So,
okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Sorry you lost your dad.
Oh, yeah. He was 103 when he died.
Wow.
Still driving up till a month before he died, so it was amazing.
Good genes.
The last year he was alive, he was using a power cart when he drove himself to Costco, but before that he was using a regular cart, so.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Ralph Robles. I am a veteran. In my service to you, I parachuted from one side of the world to the other. I jumped in blacked out conditions where I could not even see the hand in front of me. I jumped into shark-infested waters. I scuba dived for miles in dark waters with only a compass and a knife. After one jump went badly, I was operated on for a separated shoulder. I dodged rockets and slept through mortar attacks. I coordinated the restoration of communications for a 4-star general when his building was bombed by a terrorist. The VA determined that I am 30% disabled, and that's why I'm standing here on titanium hips. They told me that I was probably exposed to Agent Orange. I came here the other day to drop off my ballot, and I saw that you had moved the ballot box from its previous location in front of your building, and an area that's well lit and readily visible. And you moved it to an area that is poorly lit. It's a niche that's far from view and any cameras. Have you done this to other ballot boxes? Have you created an open invitation for ballot stuffers? I see that you have retained the Dominion voting machines. Aren't these the same machines that were found to be compromised in the 2020 election in Maricopa County in Arizona? I have been hearing that poll watchers were treated with hostility and prevented from doing their jobs. I've also heard that your ballot signature verification process was a joke. I also heard that a candidate for voter registration had not recused herself from overseeing the ballot count. Folks, you owe me an honest election. You owe all the veterans, all the first responders, all your constituents, past, present, and future. Like me, you were sworn to serve, not to rule. The Marines have a motto, always faithful, semper fidelis. I have served faithfully. The question is, have you?
Thank you, Mr. Robles, for your comments, and of course, thank you for your service to our country. We all appreciate
Thank you for
it.
letting me speak.
Of course. The elections office is overseen by a separately elected official, Mary Bedard, the Auditor Controller of Elections. And so what I'd like to do is if you could provide your comments to the clerk in writing, or we can ask Ms. Bedard to watch the video segment. I'm sure that we could request for her to reply to the concerns that you have just conveyed to us. And we appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Eddie Lane. Appreciate this opportunity. Being passed out are pictures from the following parks in Greater Bakersfield: Bell Terrace, Casa Loma, Heritage, Pioneer, Potomac, Rexon Acres, and Virginia Avenue parks. These pictures were taken during the last few days. They don't relate to future planning. They show current conditions with regard to restrooms and in some parks, the grounds. These 7 parks are all located in economically disadvantaged areas. They all fit the federal definition of being qualified census tracts for American Rescue Plan funding. These restrooms are all closed. In some, the smell of excrement and urine is strong near the restroom entrances. There are no portable restrooms in any of these 7 parks. Another picture being passed out shows the seemingly permanent portable restroom at Lake Ming, within easy walking distance of 2 restrooms. The last picture is from Kern River Campground, for which Kern County has allocated $1.2 million in general funds to renovate 2 restrooms and showers for visiting campers. A portable restroom will be available during the renovation. Kern County is currently planning to spend $7 million on Wi-Fi in parks using American Rescue Plan funding, while 7 restrooms in economically disadvantaged neighborhoods currently don't have access to even portable restrooms. This $7 million, while the city of Bakersfield has been able to secure Wi-Fi in major parks without the expenditure of even $1. And not $1 of the $1.47 million in state per capita funding, which was targeted for use in disadvantaged neighborhoods, is being allocated to these 7 parks. This is today's reality. These are the have-not parks. The issue is not funding. The issue is a commitment to parks which will serve all of Kern County residents, even those of color and limited income. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Okay, I don't see any. Then we'll move on to board member announcements and reports. Do we have anything, board members? Okay, seeing none, then we'll move on to our next items. And we have several items that are on the same subject, and so we're going to hear a presentation on items 7 through 24. And we have with us our Interim Director of Public Works, Sam Lux. And so, Mr. Lux, will you introduce the topic that we are considering, please?
Good afternoon, Chairman, board members. Today we are conducting the Proposition 218 protest hearing for fiscal year 2022-2023 solid waste rates. Proposition 218 requires approval prior to the imposition or increase of assessments and certain user fees. If opposition to the proposed increase received are 50% plus 1, the rates are not approved. The rates being proposed are the hauler rates for the collection of the solid waste, the readoption of the recycling surcharge, and an increase to the hauler admin fee. In accordance with Prop 218, the county mailed 78,957 notices to property owners regarding fiscal year 22-23 solid waste collection rates, the recycling surcharge, and the hauler admin fee. The fee structure of Kern County solid waste. Solid waste collection fee paid to franchise haulers comes in 2 different ways. For residential that is in a universal collection area, it is imposed on the tax bill. For a non-taxable area, which includes residential and commercial, customers pay directly to the franchise hauler, and customers may self-haul. The recycling surcharge, previously approved via the Prop 218 process and by the board in May 2019, was phased in over 3 years. Fiscal year 21-22 was the final year. The haulers presented data to support a continued need for the surcharge. Rates are proposed to be set at the prior year rates. For residential properties in the universal collection area, that equals $20.52 per year. And for the non-tax roll billed, it'll be $1.71 per month. For commercial properties, those rates are set by the bin size. The solid waste administration fee, or hauler admin fee, pays for the county's administrative costs of handling the franchise hauler agreements. It is billed on the tax bill or billed directly by the hauler, depending on the type of property. These rates were delayed. No action was taken on March 29th of 2022, which caused a delay in scheduling. Ordinance G9103 was enacted on May 24th, 2022, extending all solid waste rates from fiscal year 21-22 until the rates are further changed. Now in the process of setting new rates, but the new rates will not be effective until August 1st of 2022. Fiscal year 22-23 will consist of 1 month at fiscal year 21-22 rates and 11 months at the proposed rates. This concludes my portion of the presentation.
Thank you. So this is for the first group, all Prop 218 items that are on the tax roll. And so these will be agenda items 7 through 12. And so we will start with the first group, which includes all Prop 218 agenda items that are included on the tax rolls. We will be combining agenda items 7 through 12 since they are functionally equivalent for the process, so they will be heard concurrently as one hearing, but still treated separately for voting purposes. This is the time and place for the public hearing to consider the rate increases and the proposed ordinances establishing the schedule of solid waste collection charges for fiscal year 2022-2023 and providing for collection of the same on the tax roll for residential properties. These items are for the Buttonwillow Universal Collection Area, the Eastern Kern Universal Collection Area, the Lost Hills Universal Collection Area, the Metropolitan Bakersfield Universal Collection Area, the South Taft Universal Collection Area, the unincorporated Taft Universal Collection Area. Mr. Lux, can you please continue your presentation concerning these areas?
Agenda item number 7 is the Buttonwillow Universal Collection Area. The hauler is Westside Waste Management Incorporated. The fee is being proposed to be increased by the CPI and fuel factor of 5%. Item number 8 is the Eastern Kern Universal Collection Area. The hauler is Waste Management Incorporated, and the proposed fee is being increased by the CPI and fuel factor of 5%. Agenda item number 9 is Lost Hills Universal Collection Area. Hauler is Westside Waste Management Incorporated, and the fee is being proposed to increase by the CPI and fuel factor of 5%. Agenda item number 10 is the Metropolitan Bakersfield Universal Collection Area. Haulers in this area are Valley Garbage Service, Superior Sanitation, Varner & Son, Howard's Garbage Service, Varner Brothers, Price Disposal, and Lamont Sanitation. The proposed fees are being increased by the CPI and fuel factor of 5%. Agenda item number 11 is the South Shafter Universal Collection Area. The hauler in this area is American Refuse Incorporated, and the proposed fee is being increased by the CPI and fuel factor of 5%. Agenda item number 12 is the unincorporated Taft Universal Collection Area. The hauler in this area is Westside Waste Management Incorporated. The fee is being proposed to be increased by the CPI and fuel factor of 5%, and there's an additional 5% that was already approved by Prop 218 in May of 2019. And that concludes this portion of my presentation.
Thank you. So before I open the hearing, is there any property owner who wishes to file a written protest regarding the increased rates or the placement of those charges on the tax roll for any of these agenda items? If so, they must be filed with the clerk of the board now, so no protests will be considered that is submitted after the close of the hearing. Okay, I'm not seeing any. So, Madam Clerk, have there been any written protests filed with your office at this time for these items?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, for item number 9, Lost Hills, 2 protests were filed, and for item number 10, Metro Bakersfield, 20 protests were filed.
Thank you. Thank you. I will now open the hearing and receive comments from any interested persons regarding any of these areas. So the hearing is open. Okay. Do we have any comments or questions? Okay, seeing none. If anyone wishes to file a written protest, this is the last opportunity to do so. Okay, seeing none. The public hearing is now closed. And we will vote on each agenda item individually. And so that would be agenda item 7, the Button Willow, Universal Collection Area. So Mr. Lux, will you please summarize the written protest results for the Button Willow Universal Collection Area?
For agenda item number 7, parcels in this protest hearing are 369. The required threshold equals 186. We have received a total of 0 protests. Mr. Chairman, we have not received the minimum number of written protests to mandate that this item not pass. I now turn it back over to the board for consideration and vote.
Okay, so this is back to the board. Is there a motion on staff's recommendation for this item?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, you have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved, 4 ayes, 1 absent. Supervisor Perez.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Now we have agenda item number 8, the Eastern Kern Universal Collection Area. Mr. Lux, will you please summarize the written protest results for the Eastern Kern Universal Collection Area?
Agenda item number 8, parcels in this protest hearing are 555. The required threshold to meet is 279. We have received a total of 0 protests. Mr. Chairman, we have not received the minimum number of written protests to mandate that this item not pass. I now turn it back over to the board for consideration and vote.
Okay, board members, is there a motion on staff's recommendation for item 8?
So moved.
Second.
You have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved, 4 ayes, 1 absent. Supervisor Perez.
Thank you. Now we have agenda item number 9, Lost Hills Universal Collection Area. Mr. Lux, will you please summarize the written protest results for the Lost Hills Universal Collection Area?
Agenda item number 9, parcels in this protest hearing equal 288. The required threshold is 145. We have received a total of 2 protests. Mr. Chairman, we have not received the minimum number of written protests to mandate that this item not pass. I now turn it back over to your board for consideration and vote.
Thank you. Board members, is there a motion on staff's recommendation?
Second.
You have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved, 4 ayes, 1 absent. Supervisor Perez.
Okay, now we have agenda item number 10, the Metropolitan Bakersfield Universal Collection Area. Mr. Lux, will you please summarize the written protest results for the Metropolitan Bakersfield Universal Collection Area?
Agenda item number 10, parcels in this protest hearing equal 45,602. The required threshold equals 22,802. We have received a total of 20 protests. Mr. Chairman, we have not received the minimum number of written protests to mandate that this item not pass. I now turn it back over to your board for consideration and vote.
Thank you. Board members, is there a motion on staff's recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
You have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved, 4 ayes, 1 absent. Supervisor Perez.
Thank you. Now agenda item number 11, the South Shafter Universal Collection Area. Mr. Lux, will you please summarize the written protest results for the South Shafter Universal Collection Area?
Agenda item number 11, parcels in this protest hearing equal 650. The required threshold is 326. We have received a total of 0 protests. Mr. Chairman, we have not received the minimum number of written protests to mandate this item not pass. I now turn it back over to the board for consideration and vote.
Thank you, Mr. Lux. Board members, is there a motion on staff's recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved, 4 ayes, 1 absent. Supervisor Perez.
Now agenda item number 12, unincorporated Taft Universal Collection Area. Mr. Lux, will you please summarize the written protest results for the unincorporated Taft Universal Collection Area?
Agenda item number 12, parcels in this protest hearing equal 2,873. The required threshold is 1,438. We have received a total of 0 protests. Mr. Chairman, we have not received the minimum number of written protests to mandate this item not pass. I now turn it back over to the board for consideration and vote.
Thank you, Mr. Lux. Board members, is there a motion on staff's recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
You have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved, 4 ayes, 1 absent. Supervisor Perez.
We have now concluded voting on the first group and will proceed to the next group. This is the second group. All Prop 218 items that are not on the tax roll. And so this would be agenda items number 13 through 23. We will continue with the second group, which includes all Proposition 218 agenda items that are not included on the tax rolls. We will be combining agenda items 13 through 23 since they are functionally equivalent for process, so they will be heard concurrently as one hearing, but still treated separately for voting purposes. This is the time and place for the public hearing to consider the rate increases and the proposed ordinances establishing the schedule of solid waste collection charges for fiscal year 2022-2023. These items are for the following areas: the residential non-tax roll billed Zone 1, franchise area 9 and 42. Residential non-tax roll billed Zone Number 1, franchise area 17. Residential non-tax roll billed Zone 1, franchise area 44. Residential non-tax roll billed Zone 2. Residential non-tax roll billed Zone 3, franchise areas 3, 19, 38, and 43. Residential non-tax roll billed Zone 3, franchise area 5. Residential non-tax roll billed Zone 3, franchise area 10. Commercial Zone 1. Commercial Zone 2, Commercial Zone 3, franchise areas 5 and 10, Commercial Zone 3, franchise areas 3, 19, 38, and 43. Mr. Lux, can you please show your presentation concerning these areas?
Agenda item number 13 is the residential non-tax roll billed Zone 1, franchise areas 9 and 42. The hauler in this area is Westside Waste Management Incorporated. The proposed fee is being increased by CPI and fuel factor of 5%. Agenda item number 14 is residential non-tax roll billed Zone 1, franchise area 17. Hauler is American Refuse Incorporated. This fee is being proposed to be increased by a CPI and fuel factor of 5%. Agenda item number 15, residential non-tax roll billed Zone 1, franchise area 44. The hauler is South Tulare Rich Grove Refuse, and the fee is being proposed to increase by the CPI and fuel factor of 5%. Agenda item number 16 is residential non-tax roll billed Zone 2. Haulers are Valley Garbage Service, Superior Sanitation, Varner & Son, Howard's Garbage Service, Varner Brothers, Price Disposal, and Lamont Sanitation. The fee is being proposed to increase by the CPI and fuel factor of 5%. Agenda item number 17 is a residential non-tax roll billed Zone 3, franchise area 5. Hauler is Thomas Refuse Incorporated. The proposed fee is to increase by the CPI and fuel factor of 5%. Agenda item number 18 is the residential non-tax roll billed Zone 3, franchise area 10. Hauler is Mountside Disposal Incorporated. The proposed fee is to increase by CPI and fuel factor of 5%. Agenda item number 19 is the residential non-tax roll billed Zone 3, franchise areas 3, 19, 38, and 43. The hauler is Waste Management Incorporated. The proposed fee is to increase by the CPI and fuel factor of 5%. Agenda item number 20 is Commercial Zone 1. Haulers are Westside Waste Management Incorporated, American Refuse, and South Tulare Rich Grove Refuse. The proposed fee is to increase by the fuel factor of 5%. Agenda item number 21 is Commercial Zone 2. Haulers are Valley Garbage Service, Superior Sanitation, Varner & Son, Howard's Garbage Service, Varner Brothers, Price Disposal, and Lamont Sanitation. The proposed fee is to increase by CPI and a fuel factor of 5%. Agenda item number 22 is Commercial Zone 3, franchise areas 5 and 10. Haulers are Thomas Refuse, Mountain Disposal. The proposed fee is to increase by the CPI and fuel factor of 5%. Agenda item number 23 is Commercial Zone 3, franchise areas 3, 19, 38, and 43. The hauler is Waste Management Incorporated, and the proposed fee is to increase by the CPI and fuel factor of 5%. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Before I open the hearing, is there any property owner who wishes to file a written protest regarding the increased rates for any of these agenda items? If so, they must be filed with the clerk of the board now, as no protest will be considered that is submitted after the close of the hearing. So I'm seeing none. Madam Clerk, have there been any written protests filed with you prior to this time?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, for item number 17, Residential Zone 3 Franchise Area 5, we received 2 written protests. For item number 19, Residential Zone 3 Franchise Areas 3, 19, 38, and 43, we received 11 written protests.
Thank you. I will now open the hearing and receive comments from any interested persons from any of these areas. So the hearing is now open. Do we have any comments from anyone? No? If anyone wishes to file a written protest, this is the last opportunity to do so. Okay. So the public hearing is now closed, and we'll now vote on each agenda item individually. So board members, do you have any questions or comments on any of the items? Okay, very good. And so for agenda item number 13, residential non-tax roll build zone 1, franchise areas 9 and 14. Mr. Lux, will you please summarize the written protest results for the residential non-tax roll build zone 1, franchise areas 9 and 42?
Agenda item number 13, parcels in this protest hearing are 366. The required threshold is 184. We have received a total of 0 protests. Mr. Chairman, we have not received the minimum number of written protests to mandate that this item not pass. I now turn it back over to the board for consideration and vote.
Thank you, Mr. Lux. Board members, is there a motion on staff's recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
You have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved, 4 ayes, 1 absent. Supervisor Perez.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Agenda item number 14, residential non-tax roll build zone 1, franchise area 17. Mr. Lux, will you please summarize the written protest results for the residential non-tax roll build zone 1, franchise area 17 properties?
Agenda item number 14, parcels in this protest hearing equal 1,110. Required threshold is 556. We have received a total of 0 protests. Mr. Chairman, we have not received the minimum number of written protests to mandate that this item not pass. I now turn it back over to the board for consideration and vote.
Thank you, Mr. Lux. Board members, is there a motion on staff's recommendation?
Move approval.
Second.
You have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved, 4 ayes, 1 absent. Supervisor Perez.
Thank you. Agenda item number 15, residential non-tax roll build zone 1, franchise area 44. Mr. Lux, will you please summarize the written protest results for the residential non-tax roll build zone 1, franchise area number 44 properties?
Agenda item number 15, parcels in this protest hearing equals 617. Required threshold is 310. We have received a total of 0 protests. Mr. Chairman, we have not received the minimum number of written protests to mandate that this item not pass. I now turn it back over to the board for consideration and vote.
Thank you, Mr. Lux. Board members, is there a motion on staff's recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
You have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved, 4 ayes, 1 absent. Supervisor Perez.
Thank you. Agenda item number 16, residential non-tax roll build zone 2. Mr. Lux, will you please summarize the written protest results for the residential non-tax roll build zone 2 properties?
Agenda item number 16, parcels in this protest hearing equal 1,197. The required threshold is 600. We have received a total of 0 protests. Mr. Chairman, we have not received the minimum number of written protests to mandate that this item not pass. I now turn it back over to the board for consideration and vote.
Thank you, Mr. Lux. Board members, is there a motion on staff's recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
You have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved, 4 ayes, 1 absent. Supervisor Perez.
Thank you. Agenda item number 17, residential non-tax roll build zone 3, franchise area 5. Mr. Lux, will you please summarize the written protest results for the residential non-tax roll build zone 3, franchise area 5 properties?
Agenda item number 17, parcels in this protest hearing equal 5,569. Required threshold is 2,786. We have received a total of 1 protest. Mr. Chairman, we have not received the minimum number of written protests to mandate that this item not pass. I now turn it back over to the board for consideration and vote.
Thank you, Mr. Lux. Board members, do we have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved, 4 ayes, 1 absent. Supervisor Perez.
Thank you. Agenda item number 18, residential non-tax roll build zone 3, franchise area 10. Mr. Lux, will you please summarize the written protest results for the residential non-tax roll build zone 3, franchise area 10 properties?
Agenda item number 18, parcels in this protest hearing equal 1,849. The required threshold is 926. We have received a total of 0 protests. Mr. Chairman, we have not received the minimum number of written protests to mandate that this item not pass. I now turn it back over to the board for consideration and vote.
Thank you, Mr. Lux. Board members, is there a motion on staff's recommendation?
So
Motion.
moved.
Second.
You have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved, 4 ayes, 1 absent. Supervisor Perez.
Thank you. Agenda item number 19, residential non-tax roll build zone 3, franchise areas 3, 19, 38, 40, and 43. Mr. Lux, will you please summarize the written protest results for the residential non-tax roll build zone 3, franchise areas 3, 19, 38, 43 properties?
For Agenda 19, parcels in this protest hearing equal 13,132. The required threshold is 6,567. We have received a total of 11 protests. Mr. Chairman, we have not received the minimum number of written protests to mandate that this item not pass. I now turn it back over to the board for consideration and vote.
Thank you, Mr. Lux. Board members, is there a motion on staff's recommendation?
So moved.
You have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved, 4 ayes, 1 absent. Supervisor Perez.
Agenda item number 20, commercial zone 1. Mr. Lux, will you please summarize the written protest results for commercial zone 1 properties?
Agenda item number 20, parcels in this protest hearing equal 507. The required threshold is 255. We have received a total of 0 protests. Mr. Chairman, we have not received the minimum number of written protests to mandate that this item not pass. I now turn it back over to the board for consideration and vote.
Thank you, Mr. Lux. Board members, is there a motion on staff's recommendation?
Motion.
Second.
Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved, 4 ayes, 1 absent. Supervisor Perez.
Thank you. Agenda item number 21, commercial zone 2. Mr. Lux, will you please summarize the written protest results for the commercial zone 2 properties?
Agenda item number 21, parcels in this protest hearing equal 3,054. Required threshold is 1,528. We have received a total of 0 protests. Mr. Chairman, we have not received the minimum number of written protests to mandate that this item not pass. I now turn it back over to the board for consideration and vote.
Thank you. Board members, is there a motion on staff's recommendation?
Motion.
Second.
You have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved, 4 ayes, 1 absent. Supervisor Perez.
Thank you. Agenda item number 22, commercial zone 3, franchise areas 5 and 10. Mr. Lux, will you please summarize the written protest results for the commercial zone 3, franchise areas 5 and 10 properties?
Agenda item number 22, parcels in this protest hearing equal 539. The required threshold is 271. We have received a total of 0 protests. Mr. Chairman, we have not received the minimum number of written protests to mandate that this item not pass. I now turn it back over to the board for consideration and vote.
Thank you, Mr. Lux. Board members, is there a motion on staff's recommendation?
Motion.
Second.
You have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved, 4 ayes, 1 absent. Supervisor Perez.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Agenda item number 23, commercial zone 3, franchise areas 3, 19, 38, and 43. Mr. Lux, will you please summarize the written protest results for commercial zone 3, franchise areas 3, 19, 48, and 43?
Agenda item number 23, parcels in this protest hearing are 680. The required threshold is 341. We have received a total of 0 protests. Mr. Chairman, we have not received the minimum number of written protests to mandate that this item not pass. I now turn it back over to the board for consideration and vote.
Thank you. Board members, is there a motion on staff's recommendation?
Motion.
Second.
You have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved, 4 ayes, 1 absent. Supervisor Perez.
We have now concluded voting on the second group and will now proceed to the next group. This is the third group. Proposition 218 items that are on the tax rolls or are directly billed by the franchise haulers. And this would be agenda item number 24. We will continue with the third group, which includes Proposition 218 agenda items that are on the tax rolls or are directly billed by the franchise haulers. This is the time and place for the public hearing to consider the rate increase and the proposed ordinance establishing the schedule of the solid waste administration fee for fiscal year 2022-2023. Solid waste administration fee. This is the hauler admin fee. Mr. Lux, can you please show your presentation concerning this item?
Agenda item number 24, it's a solid waste administration fee or hauler admin fee. This compensates the county for the cost of managing franchise hauler contracts. The proposed rate is $1 per month per residential unit or commercial unit on the property tax roll for residential properties and universal collection areas, and directly billed by the hauler for residential and commercial properties not on the tax roll. This concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Lux. Board members, is there a motion on staff? Oops, excuse me. Sorry, I got off track on my schedule. Okay, excuse me. I need to open the protest hearing. Excuse me, Madam Clerk. Excuse me, Madam Clerk. Madam Clerk, have we received any written protests?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, we have received one written protest concerning item number 24, hauler admin fee.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lux, can you please summarize the written protest for the solid waste administration fee? Is that right? Excuse me, give me 1 second. I think.
I don't know.
Okay, thank you. I'll now open the hearing and receive comments from any interested persons from this area.
Good afternoon, members of the board and staff. My name is Richard Pellering, and I don't understand the amount of the increase in the administrative fee at 250%. I can't see what has increased in the cost to cause a 250% increase. And could I ask a question on what has the reason for that?
Absolutely.
Excuse me, did you say Richard Pellerin?
Yes.
Hi, Richard. How are you?
Hi, Dave. How you doing?
Yes, absolutely. Can we get a response from staff, please? Thank you, Mr. Lux.
The hauler admin fee is being increased to $1 to cover all of the costs that it takes to administrate all the contracts for the franchise haulers, and that includes everything in between negotiation of agreements. It's the mailers for the Prop 218. It's the basically the whole activity of the Prop 218 to get that through. It involves reviewing the bin fees and accounting things and getting things on the tax roll. The hauler administration fee started going, it has not covered what the cost of that has been since the fiscal year 17-18. So what is being done now is increasing the fee to recuperate those costs so that way we can pay the back charge off within about 5 years.
Okay. I was just curious of what the reason was, so thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it. If anyone wishes to file any written protests, this is the last opportunity to do so. So we have any written protests? No? Okay. Okay, well then the public hearing is now closed. And so we will now vote on the agenda item. So this is agenda item number 24, solid waste administration fee, the hauler admin fee. So Mr. Lux, will you please summarize the written protest results for the solid waste administration fee?
Agenda item number 24, parcels in this protest hearing are 78,957. The required threshold is 39,480. We have received a total of 35 protests. Mr. Chairman, we have not received the minimum number of written protests to mandate that this item not pass. I now turn it back over to the board for consideration and vote.
Thank you, Mr. Lex. Board members, is there a motion on staff's recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
You have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved, 4 ayes, 1 absent. Supervisor Perez.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We have now concluded voting on the third group, and this completes the public hearings for all the solid waste agenda items. They'll teach me to flip the page too fast next time. All right. So our next agenda item is item number 33. This is under County Council. This is a response to the June 14, 2022 referral regarding proposed initiative measures to impose term limits for the Board of Supervisors and submission of ordinance to the voters for a consolidated election at the November 8, 2022 general election. And so we'll hear the presentation now. I'll turn to County Council, Margot Rezan. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the board. I would like to turn it over to Assistant County Counsel Kendra Graham to make this presentation.
Yes. Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the board. On June 14th, 2022, your board heard item number 16 on the AM agenda and took action to receive and file the certification of results of examination of the County Board of Supervisors Term Limits County Initiative. At that time, your board had 2 options pursuant to Elections Code 9118 and Government Code Section 25,000. One option was to submit the ordinance without alteration to the voters at the November 2022 general election, and the other option was pursuant to Elections Code 9111, refer the proposed initiative measure for a report. Your board requested County Council prepare a report on the initiative measure to include anything that may be of interest to the board concerning this measure. You do have a copy of that report, and it has been made available to the public. I am happy to summarize that report, or if you prefer, if you've already reviewed it, I could just answer your questions on that. At that time, following that, pursuant to Elections Code 9118, your board shall submit the ordinance without alteration to the voters pursuant to Elections Code 1405. Therefore, it is recommended that your board hear the presentation on the report. On the report, receive and file the letter and report, submit the ordinance to the voters at the November 2022 consolidated general election pursuant to Elections Code Section 1405, and authorize and direct the auditor, controller, county clerk to take all necessary steps consistent with the election code to place the ordinance on the ballot. And I'm happy to either summarize that report or answer any questions.
Supervisor Couch, you requested this report. Would you like her to summarize the report, or do you have any questions? And then I'll go to the other board members.
I'm okay with us just reading the report. You don't need to spend any more effort on this. One thing I want to make sure I understand, and it's in writing right in front of me, but I'm going to ask you anyway, so for the benefit of people who might be listening. By the way, can you put this report on the website so that people can see it? Is that possible?
On our website, on County Council website?
Well, on the county website somewhere, just so it's going to be on the ballot. And is there any issue with putting this report on the website so people can read?
No, and I'm sorry, and I believe it's been included in the records.
Right.
But it will be included with records, and we can put it on the county website.
And the reason I say this is because I would like people to understand, it's going to be on the ballot. They're going to get stuff in the mail, I'm sure, but here's a pretty concise report on this measure, and it also outlines some other measures in other counties, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 other counties, I think it is, that you took a look at.
That's correct.
And the question that I think is sort of before us is, this reminds me of I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago, when I think the only question left for us, we need to put this on the ballot, but if we agree with this, or if we think there's a better idea, we have until August 12th to bring that, to actually take action to put our idea, if we have one, on the ballot. Is that correct?
Yeah, it would actually be August 9th, which is your last
That's the
board
Tuesday
meeting.
before the 12th?
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Supervisor Maggard?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's language in this one that's before us that appears to me to attempt to make it superior to an alternative that might be placed on the ballot at the same time. Is this superior as far as causing the other one not to go into effect? I know there's language about a greater number of votes for the alternative one or whatever, but can that be dealt with? There's a naked, I know that's a harsh word, but there's a naked power grab attempt here to control the makeup of this board going forward because some unions didn't get their way. And as they're doing that, they are, I think, seizing an opportunity to manipulate the public into doing something that I don't know that the public might fully understand. So if we did something that was, as Supervisor Couch suggested, an alternative that was a bit more obvious as to its implications, does this one before us have language that would make it superior to an alternative?
Supervisor Maggard, through the chair, no, it does not. In fact, if you were to propose an alternative, it could contain the same language, and whichever initiative or measure that received the most votes would proceed.
And the other one does not go into effect at all?
That's correct.
Okay.
If they were competing measures, they would, whichever one received the most votes would proceed and the other one would fail.
Some of what I've heard is that some of the elements of this are rather draconian. This has no effect on me. I'm not running for re-election. I won't be a supervisor in Kern County again. You know, it doesn't have any effect on me whatsoever. But it appears to try to foist upon the people of Kern County some implications that aren't present in any other county in California. Is that something you could point out to us now, or is that something we should discuss at another time?
I want to make sure I understand their questions. Your question, are you asking whether...
For example, a lifetime ban, that you could never run for office again.
That's correct.
Does that exist in any other county in California?
I thought I had seen maybe one that had a similar language, but out of the 10 counties that we looked at, maybe one of them did. I think I saw one that said 2 terms. That was San Joaquin, maybe? Oh, possibly San Joaquin. The text of their measure has not been codified yet, so we didn't get to look at that one in depth. But yes, yours would be more stringent than most. It would be taking the most draconian, to use your word, approach to this.
Well, I think it's worth contemplating because I think this is an attempt to seize a moment in time when there's a great deal of frustration to reach a political conclusion that serves a few of our union memberships and not the people of Kern County, in my opinion.
Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Couch?
Would you say, and I'm only looking at the last page of this, where you detail out the 10 counties and sort of in a very limited way describe what they do, what the measures do. Is it El Dorado and Orange that have specific language that limit the number of terms, but also allow for someone to come back and serve again after a certain period of time? Are those the only 2 that you know of?
All of the ones that say consecutive terms, and I think there's more than that, would allow you to come back after serving 2 consecutive years or 2 consecutive terms or 3 consecutive terms. if you took time off, you could come back and run again for an additional 3 or 2 consecutive terms.
So, for example, County of Orange, in the parentheses, it says, in quotes, no other limitation on the number of terms a person may serve is intended. I take that to mean you can serve your 2 consecutive terms and come back in 2 years, in 4 years, in 20 years. There's no, I'd have to see the measure, I guess. You'd have to read that. But if that's all it says.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment of how
Okay.
that reads, yes.
And the first one, El Dorado, the limitation resets after a 4-year hiatus.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question. Now, in the state legislature, is it, I believe it's 12 years in either house. Is that the limit now that they have? They modified their term limits?
I'm not certain of that.
I'm pretty sure that's what it is. 12 years total. I mean, before it was 3 in the Assembly, so that, so that's 6, and then 2 in the Senate, which would be 8. But then they made it 12 years total, and so this is even shorter than what the state legislature has as far as total years. And what's that? No. Well, I don't think term limits have worked out in Sacramento. Period. It's worse than ever. But anyways, I guess I have a question of timing. If this board did decide to put on an alternative measure for the voters to consider, we're looking at our next board meeting on July 19th, because we are dark on the 5th and the 12th. And so I'd look to staff to see. You said the date to get it on was in early August. Is that correct?
That's correct. August 9th would be your last board meeting
Okay,
before
August
the
9th
deadline.
would be the date. That would be the last date that we could vote to put it on. And so we would have to be considering alternatives then probably by the 26th, so we could have some discussion maybe at the very latest. And so that would require a referral on the 19th, or we could give you a referral today.
You
to do
could
that.
give a referral today, while you would still have to take action to send the citizens measure to the voters. You could still, at the same time, make a referral to bring back your own initiative.
And could we ask staff, say, bring us back an initiative that has three terms, bring us back an initiative that has 2, but provisions where you could come back after a 4-year hiatus, something for us to consider. And we could even put on multiple initiatives on the ballot as well. Could we not? Multiple alternatives to give the voters, rather than 2 choices, maybe they got 3 choices.
I didn't research that, whether or not you could do more alternatives, but sitting here today, I don't see any reason why you could not.
Right. So we can wait till the 19th to discuss it, or we can start making some referrals now. But as far as it stands now, we can go ahead and vote on this item. I can open this up to the public. Did I ask for a public comment yet? I don't think I did. Are there any members of the public that would like to make any comment on the item?
Chairman, just a real quick question before we
Mr.
go.
Peters, of course.
Thank you. Is this a simple majority measure, or would it be a certain, or a threshold above that of 66%?
If it goes to the voters, it's a simple majority.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor. Any members of the public that would like to make any comment? Okay, seeing none, I'll return to the board.
Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Couch.
Sorry, I'll make a motion on the staff's recommendation, which is to place it on the ballot, right? And then I think, to give you plenty of time, we ought to make a referral today. I don't know exactly what that referral ought to say, but I like the chairman's idea of let's have several options to choose from, at least consider and discuss on the 19th, and then we can make a decision either on the 26th or the 2nd or the 9th. Am I right? Do I have my dates right?
The
2nd and 9th
the
of August.
19th or the 26th or the 6th of August, right?
Oh,
Because if we make the referral today, we could consider them potentially as early as the 19th.
yes.
Is that right, Madam Clerk? Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, your board meets July 19th, July 26th, and August 9th.
August
Oh,
9th.
not on the 2nd, okay.
Our preference would be to bring it back to your board if there's a referral made today on the 19th for your consideration, which then leaves open
Sure.
the 26th or even the 9th the 9th if necessary. But it would be our preference to keep it moving if you make such a referral.
And the referral doesn't need to be a part of this motion.
I think it's cleanest to make a separate motion.
Very good. Okay, so we have a motion on this item.
I'll second it.
Okay, Supervisor Peters, second. Yeah, this will put theirs on the ballot, and then we can discuss alternatives after we're finished here. So you have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved, 4 ayes, 1 absent. Supervisor Perez.
Okay, so that does bring us to the conclusion of the agenda, and so now we can continue the discussion about alternative measures. Supervisor Maggard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just thinking about logistically how to bring us back a report. If you put together the language for each of the iterations that we think might be possible, a 2-year term, a 2-term limit, a 3-term limit would be another paragraph. A third paragraph would be you could run again later with a hiatus, whatever language is necessary to make it clear that there's no lifetime ban, or maybe that just not being mentioned. But if you dealt with each of those as like paragraphs, then we could choose, we want paragraphs 1, 3, and 7 inserted in alternative 1 and 2, 5, and 6 in alternative 2 or whatever. Does that seem feasible? I'm not trying to tell you how to do it. I'm just spinning off ideas on how to do it.
Yeah, Supervisor Maggard, through the chair, I think the easiest way of doing that would be for us to draft a proposed document that contains all the provisions that we think are necessary, and then for the areas that have options, such as a 2 consecutive and then a hiatus, or 3 consecutive, 3 and then a hiatus, put those in kind of a middle block and say you can pick option 1, 2, or 3 from those for all those areas where there are options.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Couch.
Thank you, sir. Can we have an option that says, or that gives the voters the option of voting yes or no, that there will not be any term limits imposed? In other words, the voters get a chance to say, we don't want term limits for the Board of Supervisors, or maybe any other of the elected county offices as well. And they would have to vote to overturn that in order to have any term limits imposed in the future?
I probably need to research. I know that we can have a competing initiative, but I don't know if we can have one that says no term limits. But I'm happy to look into it, and if I can certainly bring that back to your board as one of the options.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So which options are we looking for? We're looking at a 2-term limit, but you can, after a hiatus, come back and serve. A 3-term limit with the same kind of provision, and then the idea of voting that there shall be no term limits for the Kern County Board of Supervisors. Are those the 3 options you're bringing?
Yes, those are the 3 I can bring forward.
Any other thoughts, Supervisor Maggard?
There is the real prospect that 10 years from now, lines will be redrawn, and it's quite conceivable that someone might find themselves serving in a district that they did not serve in before. And in that event, should the term limit apply, or should they have an opportunity to run for 2 more terms in an area that they've never represented before? That would be another alternative to put in.
And Supervisor Mag, through the chair, that could be another term that if the boundaries change, or if a supervisor were to serve 2 terms and then move to a completely different
Right.
district, they could run again.
Which does happen.
It does, yes. It will likely happen again someday. I think this begs this question to be just put on the table today, but I suspect it's beyond the. I don't know that we would do this before the end of July, but Measure K represents many problems. And Measure K has introduced a scenario in which public employee unions can put up unlimited numbers of independent expenditures and whatnot, and make it very, very difficult for someone to run. And if a new person is to run every 8 years, it's a daunting task to raise the money that's necessary to do it and to compete with those special interests. So I don't know if it's now or another time, but Measure K would be an interesting issue for us to put before the voters as well someday. Well, but I'm interested in whatever thoughts you have.
And Supervisor Maggard, I believe that that's something that the board, I believe there's a provision in Measure K where it can be adjusted, like the contribution limits can be adjusted for CPI, cost of living, however you want to say it. And I think that measure was established sometime around 2002, 2003. And so something tells me the cost of living has gone up over the last 20 years. And so could that adjustment be made that took in all the years of cost of living, where the limits would then be adjusted based on how much the CPI had gone up over 20 years?
Is that something you're looking for a separate?
Oh, yes.
Something separate to come forward on Measure K?
Yeah. Could that be something that could come back as, as an additional report? Maybe a board item for us to see in either on the 19th or the 26th. I mean, obviously, the timing isn't as constrained as this. And so perhaps staff would want to take more time with it. But, but I believe that that's something that the board can adjust, which is built into the measures language. But I'm not sure about that. Okay. But I'd be interested in having staff bring it back, and appreciate the supervisor bringing that item up, because 20 years is a long time to, to leave the limits the same. I know with the state legislature, for instance, they have it adjusts every year or every 2 years with the state legislature.
So if I understand correctly, that'd be a referral to bring back a report on Measure K.
Yes.
And whether or not those CPIs can be adjusted?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, we can do that. Thank you.
Would you like a vote on these referrals?
Yes, please.
Okay. Well, then I would entertain a motion, unless there's any further discussion.
Well, Mr. Chairman, can I just ask one question?
Yes.
Supervisor Maggard made a comment that I thought he was going a little further than even just increasing the contribution limits. Were you suggesting, and I'm not opposed to considering this, and I don't know if we can even do this, putting something on the ballot that repeals Measure K in part or in total, or you were just looking at changing the contribution limits, increasing them due to which is in the measure, I believe.
I just inferred from what he was saying that he was talking about the contribution limits.
Yeah. I think it's a worthwhile discussion to hear from the community what they think of Measure K and whether or not it is appropriate to continue it or appropriate to adjust it. So I'm open to any of those, but it is, for those that don't run for office, they don't see the implications of it, but I know that more than one of us has had to run against, way in excess of $100,000 being spent from one source, and we have to raise money $500 at a pop to offset that, and the reason that I'm bringing it up is that kind of goes hand in hand with the effort that I think this term limit initiative is the product of, and that is some employer groups didn't get their way, and they want more money in raises, and they're going to try to find a way to put people in place that can accomplish that. And that, I believe, just serves the taxpayers of Kern County and serves the interests of those very limited special interest groups. So some discussion about all that, I think, is worthwhile at some point.
I would even go so far as to say it empowers independent expenditures more than an actual campaign.
Well, if If you're looking to have the voters consider it, then we need to consider the timeline, which is August 6th. And so perhaps we would need to have to come back sooner. If we're just talking about adjusting the contribution limits and the overall spending limit, which I believe can be adjusted through the ordinance, but as I said, if it's been a long time since I've looked at that, then that would be, I believe, an action that the board can do to just apply that CPI provision. But I could be wrong on that. I'm not sure if that's the case. And so I think at the very least, a report back on Measure K. And you've heard our questions and our comments and what things we're concerned about. So at the very least on the 19th, we'd like a report back on Measure K. But potentially, if we were looking to send that to the voters, then we'd have to do that pretty rapidly, either on the 26th or by the 6th of August at the very least, at the very latest.
So I'll make a motion that we bring back a report on that on the 19th as well.
So okay, so your motion is a report on the 19th on Measure K, but what about these?
Oh, we don't have a motion. I'll make a motion first on the bringing back
ballot language.
The different ballot language on the term limit potential.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved. 4 ayes, 1 absent. Supervisor Perez.
Thank you. And now, is there a motion in regards to
a motion to bring back a report on Measure K, and the date is not as important. If you want to do it the following week, so as to not clutter the agenda up, which would be the 26th, we still have until. If the chairman said August 6th, but it's the 9th, right? Okay.
Supervisor Couch, I would suggest that the report at the very least comes back on the 19th, so we would have more time, and a referral could be made at that point to consider language if that's the direction we want to go on the 26th with a backup of August 6th.
That's fine with me.
Okay.
I'm good. So the referral is to bring it back on the July 19th.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved. 4 ayes, 1 absent. Supervisor Perez.
Thank you. So having no further business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn to Tuesday, July 19th at 9 a.m. We are adjourned.
Webb will orbit the Sun 1 million miles from Earth at the second Sun-Earth Lagrange point.